What's up, hackers? Welcome to Saturday Hacker Day. My name is Taggart, and today, as always on Saturdays, we're going to start with a little bit of this week in cyber. But before I go any further, I just want to say thank you to the incredible generosity of the community already today. Let's see, we've got Marzook, we've got Orbital, of course, up in the mix. Thank you so much for your gift subscriptions. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about this week in cyber. There isn't a whole lot of news that I actually want to talk about, but I want to start with a little bit of an editorial, and this is about catastrophizing 0 days, which we had a little bit of this week, and I think it's worth just kind of addressing right here what's going on and how it actually does negatively impact our industry in cybersecurity. This week we had another catastrophic, disastrous 0 day that wasn't, in the form of Spring4Shell, which was a legitimate remote code execution vulnerability in the Java Spring library. The thing was that there were very specific circumstances under which it could be exploited. It was in no way, shape, or form the same kind of severity that we had with the Log4Shell vulnerability in the Log4j2 library. And consequently, we had this thing happen. It was kind of interesting because it started to happen with Spring4Shell and then it stopped because there was no there. But one thing that happens is this cycle whenever we have a new 0 day that looks to be very, very scary, is that there's this cycle of conversation that starts happening in social media, but more importantly, in broadly consumed cyber news, where it becomes this fodder for articles getting published, and all of them are the same. They're all rehashes of the original write-up, and they all just say, patch now, patch now, patch now. And that echo chamber becomes a very fervent call for action, especially to leadership. And that's worth interrogating a little bit. Let's unpack what happens there. Because why do we want another disastrous vulnerability? Do we want it? We talk about it so much like we really do want it, or at least the media that we consume does. And of course, even in social media, right, we have the kind of like, oh, this is going to be good, let's get the popcorn kind of vibe. But there is an actual hurt party. There's a victim to that kind of conversation cycle, that kind of news cycle. And this is the people who actually have to do the work. Because even if something isn't a legitimate vulnerability, leadership is going to be concerned that there is one, especially leadership that is not technically inclined. And if what they're consuming is telling them that something is scary, they're going to ask of their employees to do a lot of extra labor to confirm that they are secure. What that means is that when we catastrophize these 0 days, even if they are serious, but there are legitimate mitigations that can be put in place, if we have to go crazy for every single one of them, two things happen. One, if every 0 day is a disaster, then none of them are. And two, you're going to burn out your blue team and your operators much more quickly, because if you constantly kill their nights and weekends working on these kinds of things just to satisfy the concerns of leadership, they're going to get burnt out, and they don't have the time to do the real important work of constantly maintaining the environment. And so I wanted to talk a bit about that kind of catastrophizing and recognize it for what it is. It drives, more than anything, clicks. The reason why we like to talk, or that we hear so much about some 0 days, some of them, they really are interesting. Some of them are fascinating, and some of them really are dangerous. But not all of them are. And we have to recognize the difference. And for me, recognizing the difference is understanding, for example, in Log4j, what was the prevalence of the library, how many people were using it in production, how many people had applications that were vulnerable to it, externally. And that is absolutely, that was a really, really scary and prevalent vulnerability. Brian's absolutely right. The media loves named vulnerabilities too, and we have to be mindful of that. When we give something a cool name, what's that going to do? Exactly. If it heart bleeds, it leads, right? Um, but there is an actual, this isn't just a conversation about the media because there is an actual material consequence for this news cycle, which is burnout in the industry. And I want to avoid that because I know that the people who are doing this work, they are committed to what they're doing, they're passionate about what they're doing, but we can burn them out quickly. Now, on that point, we actually have a real vulnerability that got released just yesterday that is kind of interesting and worth talking about, I think, which is CVE 2022-1162. This is a really silly vulnerability in GitLab. And the reason I'm mentioning it here, there was of course the Apple 0 days. I'm like done with Apple 0 days because is it really news that there are 0 days now in iOS software? Seems like Apple's had a run of them kind of every week, and we know that the research is ongoing in that realm because people pay top dollar for those vulnerabilities. So yes, obviously there's going to be this there's always going to be a new vulnerability in iOS, and update your devices when you see that. I just want to call out the incredible Mutual Appreciation Society going on in chat right now. It's so great to see. Matt, thank you so much for the subscription for Triz. And Orbital and Matt both said, this community wouldn't be where I am without all of you. It's greatly appreciated. We're so glad that you're here. And yeah, I do think that this community is something really, really special. And we build each other up in profound ways. So quickly on this GitLab vulnerability, essentially what was going on is if you were using an OmniAuth provider, so OAuth, LDAP, or SAML in GitLab Community Edition or Enterprise in versions 14.7 or prior. Okay, so 14.7.7, 8, 8.5, and 9. There was a hard-coded password for the SAML authentication, basically. And so that was guessable, of course, if you set up your own. Then you set up your own GitLab instance, you'd be able to see that in the source code and then attempt to exploit that on remote systems. Now, the reason I mention this specifically about GitLab is because a lot of people have public GitLab instances that they've spun up for their own usage. And what's so scary about GitLab is because as an alternative to GitHub and people who roll their own Git repository, this one means that somebody could compromise a business's entire CI/CD pipeline, inject source code into it, hook onto the GitLab, what I forget what they're called. It's like pipelines. It's whatever GitLab's equivalent of GitHub Actions are, but hook into those for malicious intent, as we demonstrated 2 Tuesdays ago using GitHub in GitHub Actions to trigger remote shells in Azure, right? So this one's pretty scary, especially because it does involve something that's guessable easily. So if you do run a GitLab instance, be aware of this and see if you can get that version of GitLab updated promptly. Yeah, I do remember the default creds for Raspberry Pis. That was a good one. Okay, so the plan for today is we're going to talk a little bit about web shells. OmniAuth is a third-party vendor, is the question. Yeah, it's an open source situation, I think, that I believe GitLab uses for its SAML or OIDC authentication, if I'm reading this correctly. It unifies the authentication pipelines for each of them, because if anyone has ever had to write OAuth pipelines or OpenID Connect authentication pipelines, it sucks. It is my least favorite thing to do as a web developer. Okay, but we're going to talk about web shells today. We're going to talk about what they are, how they're exploited, how they get onto systems, and then what you can do about that once they're there, or how to prevent them in the first place. So this is going to be kind of a home labby episode. So we're going to do some stuff in the home lab showing you how to set up these kinds of environments. Then we're going to attack. Then we're going to detect and defend. That's the plan. Let's get to it. All right, so we're going to start here. I've got Starbase up and running. And we'll bring up some tunes. And so for those of you who are newer to the stream, what we have here is in my house an HP ProLiant DL380p server, enterprise server that I sprung for to do content like this. It wasn't actually so bad. I'll tell you that it cost around $425 to make this work. And so we have a couple of things up and running right now. And here's the plan for today. I want to do a web shell on a Linux server and a Windows server. And we're going to show you how to set up that environment so that you can play with them. And then we're going to attack and defend. Our SOC is up and running. One hopes. Let's go back to agents and see how we're doing. Brian's like found some research Dell machines. Yeah, so I will tell you that the place that I got this server was from an outfit selling on eBay called SaveMyServer.com. And honestly, phenomenal. I was very happy with the whole situation. And they also sell additional components. So if after you buy the server, you want to expand it with extra drives or extra RAM, things like that, you can go to the same provider and, you know, reasonably have the same level of quality. Yeah, so this was kind of which processors came with the HP. You know, I always forget that, but here you go. I'm running Xeon E5 2670s version 2. So 20 cores total. You can see that, you know, my usage is, I've got a number of machines up and running. I'm doing okay. 64 gigs of RAM, which is way upgradable. I didn't feel a need to do it yet, but I may. About a terabyte of storage. And yeah, it works like a dream. I'm really happy with this machine once we got it up and running. So I have spun up a new Windows server for this exercise. I didn't want to mess with our file server. So I'm going to go ahead and get this up and running. It is a really nice formula. And of course, the other thing is that I'm managing them all with Ansible, and also the secret sauce with Ansible is that I'm using Ansible with SSH, which I'm going to show you how to set up right now. Now, one of the things that I haven't totally sorted yet is using Packer to get the base Windows image template sorted. That's because Packer is, I believe, an engine of frustration from hell, which, you know, we have fewer printers, I should say, than we used to. And I don't know if you know this, but printers were an engine of chaos created by the universe to add a certain amount of frustration and anger to the universe. There has to be a certain amount, there's a quota, and printers were the vessel by which that was delivered. Now, since we have fewer printers in use, the arbiters of reality had to find other ways to inject that chaos and disorder into our realm. Packer is one of those ways. There are a few others, but Packer certainly is one of them, and so I hate it a lot. I don't like using it, even though it's the right tool to get your base image for virtual machines set up. Okay, so the first thing I need to do with this brand spanking new Windows server, I'm not going to use the server manager to set up all of the server stuff like IIS to create a web server. My whole purpose is to do that with Ansible. But in order to use Ansible to do that, I need to configure this machine the right way. What is the right way? Well, let's take a look at our hardware here. I have two network interfaces. One of them is in my local isolation lab, and one of them is internet connected. The reason I set up my machines like that is because the isolation lab I can have on, I can disconnect the internet NIC at the VM, at the hypervisor level. So if I do something that is sensitive, like malware analysis, in my lab, I can isolate it entirely and not worry about it getting out into the wild. But, you know, sometimes things need internet connections, and in particular, Windows needs internet connections, because even if you have an eval license, which of course that's what we're doing with these, if it's not connected to the internet, it will kill your eval and just give you an hour of time and then shut down after an hour. That is not what I want to do. So instead, we're gonna leave this connected to the internet for now. But I do need to configure the IP addresses. And so... come on. So network 2. It has an IP address of 10.1.99.105. It has, so it does have an IP address because I set up a DHCP server on this subnet, but I actually want to give it a hard-coded address. And the reason I want to give it a hard-coded address, is because I am fastidious about my inventory. This is the inventory of the lab, and I give everything an IP address so I know where it is. Also, Ansible addresses devices by IP. So if I want to be able to hit something reliably with Ansible, I need to give it a static IP. There are other ways you can fix this. God, I hate doing this. Network status tasks. There we go. Ethernet instance 02. Properties. Okay. So that's going to be 10.1. Oh my god. How terrible is this interface for setting IP addresses? It's something that I have to deal with constantly, and it's just awful. Oh, Matt has a great question. On a scale of 1 to loud, how loud is your server? Okay, when it's posting, when it's turning on, it's definitely, you know, I'm standing on the tarmac of an airport that services jets. It's pretty loud. But then once it's up and running, it's like, it's a noticeable purr, but it's not, I don't know, it doesn't bother me. Yeah, Brian, you can set it with PowerShell. The reason I'm doing it this way is just because, like, trying to enter PowerShell commands through the VNC interface right here, like, sucks. So I'm not doing it that way for now. And I'm going to use the following DNS server. This is going to get set once I join it to the domain anyway. 99. I believe it's 3 is the domain controller. Yeah. And we'll give it a quad 8 as the alt. Yeah, this interface is just a little logy, but once I have everything set up correctly, I can do RDP. Oh, Brian, thank you so much for the 5 gift subs. That's incredibly generous, sir. Really appreciate it. Yeah, let's enable remote desktop. We're going to want that one. All right. So this looks good. Let's confirm. Our situation here. I will run an IP config here just to be sure. So the trick with setting up a web server on Windows is you kind of need to, okay, 10.1.99.8, that looks good. Let's confirm that we can hit it from the Ansible server. Ping c4 10.1.99.8. Oh dear. Oh, but that may be because ping is disabled. Yeah. So let's try to remote into it with KRDC. So we'll do remote. I always forget that ping is disabled by default on Windows. It's so annoying. 10.1.99.8. And we'll do, I like to do a 1440 by 900 resolution on these. So it's windowed still, but it's big enough to be usable. Okay. Administrator. Delightful. Okay, so we are in fact connecting to this thing. That's awesome. So and this is the part that I really need to automate, is the OpenSSH configuration. This is what you need to do to get your Windows server working with SSH. I'll drop this documentation in the chat in case anyone is interested. And all we have to do, because we're doing the OpenSSH server here, so we're going to run this command, add Windows capability online, name OpenSSH server. That does its thing. And then we have to set up the firewall rules for it, and then we're off to the races. Now, one of the reasons I wanted to talk about web shells today is because it's one of the most, if you have public infrastructure, if you run web servers that are connected to the internet, it's one of the most common things that you're going to run into as a defender. For example, if you have WordPress sites that are loosely managed, odds are you're going to get got at some point. And the way that looks is, it's honestly so different in real life from what you'll see in like TryHackMe or CTFs. It's kind of funny. The low-level criminals that are going after your WordPress sites and things like that, I'm just going to ask chat, like, what do you think their compromises look like when they get code execution on your web server? What do you think they do with it? Spam. Orbital, say more about spam. Malicious SEO garbage, DDoS attack platform. Links to all the pages. Real ones know. That's right. Orbital, Ginge. Deo Volante. So, reverse shell or plant backdoor? Like, almost never. I have to say that most of what I see is definitely what Orbital and Ginge were saying, which is about the fact that they don't really care about compromising your server beyond what they need to do with it, which is usually financially motivated. So what they're doing is your domain name is trusted, right? So what they'll do is they will, if it's a WordPress site, they'll create a bunch of fake articles with fake links to get people going in there. But also very often they will set up redirectors so that when they send spam, it'll hit that page on your site that they've planted and bypass spam filters, and then the user will get redirected to whatever site they were trying to do. A very funny one I saw was a bunch of redirects to illegal streams of college football games. And that was all they were using the infrastructure for. Like, they got code execution on a server, but they didn't really care. They just wanted to do that to redirect to those streams and send the links out. And then we got to start the service and then set the firewall stuff. So we just copy pasta this, and then we're good. So we'll run that script. Just takes a second. And then we have a couple of Ansible playbooks ready to go. And in particular, the domain join is the one that I want to do. And so we're going to target, this is all good, Windows hosts. Those rascals ripping off the NCAA. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there was like an illegal betting component to it too. I don't know. As you may have guessed from everything about me, I'm not a huge college football fan. I am genetically required to say go birds, but that's about it. I am a baseball fan. I'm pretty excited that spring training is starting. There may be moments as we move into spring that I'll be bemoaning the Phillies. So you've been warned. They're very easy to bemoan. All right. So that's up and running. And so the SSH server, Sixers fan, I've been to one Sixers game and I was like 12. It was Jordan's last game. It was cool. I did see Iverson square off against Jordan. That was kind of rad. But no, I don't really follow. I don't have the bandwidth, honestly. It's not that I don't like them. It's just I don't have the bandwidth to follow them. The same with hockey. I used to play hockey, and I just don't have the bandwidth to follow the Flyers. Baseball, for whatever reason, is like the thing that I can stick onto. Also, a good friend of mine is on a Phillies baseball podcast, so that helps. I can follow that way. Yeah, live games are the best. Time and cost to get out of hand. Yeah. I even pay for MLB TV because I do miss going to the games. And even, I don't know, summer for me, summer is about baseball. It just always has been. Nova should be a good game tonight. Who are they playing, Orbital? All right, SSH is up. So what we're gonna try to do the domain join. And the way this works, we're in our Ansible server here, and we have the domain join playbook. And so if you look at how the domain join playbook works, it's got Windows hosts. And so, as I said, we're talking about how to do this home labby stuff. That's why I'm taking the time to do this. So if we look at our Ansible sudo vim etc Ansible hosts, if we look at this inventory, I have added the 10.1.99.8 to the Windows hosts group. And so to run this correctly, I'm going to do Ansible playbook domain join, and I'm going to limit it to the 10.1.99.8 host because I don't need it to run it on everything else. But this should work, should being the operative four-letter word here. It's joining the machine to a domain. I'm probably going to have to disconnect, or it will disconnect for me. Is it me or do most AL games have about 50% of Red Sox fans that fly to the away game to watch the fan? Ooh. But renaming it to ZDFS01 failed with following up. The account already exists. Oh. Right. I have to vim domain join. Change that host name. It should be ZDWeb01. So I just need to change the host name here, unfortunately. But otherwise it worked fine. I just forgot to change that host name. That was my dumb mistake. I got to rename it. It should ask me because I joined the domain, but it should, yeah. What? Good. I don't know why that failed last time. And we'll have to reboot it, I'm assuming, to make that work. So we'll do that. And let's talk about what you need to do to get this running on a Linux machine. So we're going to set up a web server on a Linux machine as well. I have a Linux machine that's up and running, and I have this kind of set up, but this is what the Ansible job looks like. We're going to set up a WordPress site, because why not? And so this is what the WordPress task looks like. We install unzip, because WordPress has latest.zip. That's where you kind of get the latest version of WordPress. And so you install unzip from apt, and you download it, you install it by copying it over to var dub HTML. You change the owner in the group to dub data the way that you should, otherwise you'll have weird permissions issues. Remote source means that it's on the system, right? We've done the download of this with the download, so it's looking for it here rather than on the Ansible controller. We clean up the files, we get rid of temp WordPress, we get rid of temp latest.zip, and then we're solid. Now, this does require a web server, though. This is just WordPress. So if we look at the WordPress YAML file, you'll see that it uses two roles, one of which we just saw, which was WordPress. The other one is LAMP, the Linux Apache MySQL PHP stack. And that looks like this. We install Apache 2. Don't forget to do the update cache for this, because this is what tells the Ansible job to run apt update if you're on Linux, or yum update. I'm only using Ubuntu here, but if you were doing CentOS or Red Hat, you would do update cache, which would do exactly that. You do ansible.builtin.yum for that, presumably. But here we install PHP, we install PHP MySQL, and then MySQL Server. Now, this isn't configuring the MySQL Server with a password or anything yet, so that's kind of a next step that we need to do. All right, that looks good. Let's reconnect with KRDC. Just make sure that everything looks good here. And we're also going to install Waza. I'm a huge fan, as folks know, of Waza and how it works. 3 disconnected agents, huh? This is just happening because I'm, turning the server off and on, and the reconnections take a second. In order to add new Waza members, though, they actually give us a nice deploy new agent command right here, and it's 10.1.99.4, and we'll add it to Windows. And that's it. So I've actually been working on a new Waza playbook. To make this happen. And here we're going to replace it, the 10.1.99.4 that's hard-coded, with the variable that we can set here in the Ansible playbook itself. So the Waza manager IP and the Waza registration IP. Did I watch Jeff Geerling's DDoS video? Nope, I did not. All right, that's good. Now. Hostname still isn't changed. I may have to change that domain controller. At the moment, I don't care as much, because we're going to burn this down anyway. But it should be domain joined. And so let's turn this thing into a proper web server. How do we do that? Let's set this up. Get status. Get add Waza. Get commit. And by the way, these playbooks that I'm using are available. They're on GitHub. Don't forget to change. But it's not. Oh, I forgot to push. All right, so now we can do Ansible playbook Waza, if I can type Waza, and we'll again limit it to the 10.1.99.8 because I don't need it to be on anything else. The field host is required but not set because I'm not that bright. Yeah. Hosts. Windows. Hosts. Is that how I've named it? Windows hosts, yeah. Rick and Morty. Oh, how did Tyler get so good at so many subjects? The answer is survival. Here's why. For most of my career, I was basically a one-man band. If you ever saw Mary Poppins, right? The chimney sweep character, Bert, right? He has that one-man band thing with a bass drum on the back that he moves with his leg. He's got like a horn on the one side and cymbals on his elbows and stuff like that. That's kind of like how I've spent my career in IT, where I've had to do everything from server administration, network engineering, tier 1 support, software development. I have had to teach myself all of that stuff. So it's one, survival, and honestly just constant practice. Mary Poppins, y'all. Yeah, pretty much. That's the reality, is that I've had to do it because I've worked in places that couldn't afford other people to make things happen, and I knew there were better ways to do it. So a lot of practice, and the truth is that the information is out there, but it does just take a bunch of time. And I've been at this for a minute. I started working in IT, well, I mean, I grew up with computers. I had the unique privilege. My dad worked with computers from a very early age. So there were always pieces of machines strewn about our house. And if I wanted to get a computer to work to play games, for example, I had to learn how to put it together and, make those things work. I have a distinct memory of like installing a SCSI card in an old in an old tower to get like a hard drive working so that I could then get Windows up and then play Commander Keen, right? All of that stuff I was doing before I was 10. And then after that, I was always the kid who was like, I could help the teacher with their computer, and I just was that kid forever. So I grew up with technology, even though I never had any formal training in it, right? My college degree is in English, but I was always fascinated by it. So I think that's just it. A lifelong fascination, and then a career of having to survive. Did I not save this? Ah! Oh, sorry. Don't forget to change. Don't forget to change the IP settings and the hostname settings. I have these set up for the way that we've designed the lab here, but change them for yours if you have a different IP configuration, an IP scheme. All right, so this, I'm hoping, we'll install Waza on this server, and then we'll go ahead and install IIS. We have, on our other machine, the Linux web server, we have everything set up. If we go to 10.1.99.5, I do have a brand spanking new Apache Ubuntu default page set up. And I have WordPress, although it says your PHP installation appears to be missing the MySQL extension, which is not true. I did install it. What is this? 5. Maybe I had to restart Apache after after installing the PHP MySQL. Why English degree sucks? Hey, Wolfgang. Pretty offensive to somebody who got an English degree and actually thinks it did me a lot of good. Why? Because I wanted to be a good writer, and it turns out that I am a good writer, and I'm a good communicator. And it turns out that those are the kinds of things that I needed formal training in, whereas the technical skills I was able to pick up anyway. I had no intention of being an IT professional when I went to college. Like many of us, that just sort of happened. But yeah, how about don't cast aspersions on other people's formal education? So we do have, obviously, we have a WordPress setup here. Brian, you're a trusted platform module? Well, thank you for enabling Windows 11. So we have WordPress set up, obviously, here. And we're just going to do a bare bones setup. To make that happen, I was really hoping there was an easy way to do like a MySQL setup in Ansible that we haven't seen yet. God, this is a long article. Installing MySQL and its dependencies. Create MySQL user. This is the stuff. So this is the stuff that we need for MySQL. It sucked to learn what you don't particularly enjoy. Wolfgang, if I made it seem like I didn't enjoy any part of it, that couldn't be further from the truth. I loved learning about literature and everything else that I did. I loved learning how to be a better writer. I've written a novel. I've written tons of poetry. That is a huge part of me, and I wouldn't give it up for anything. To quote Whitman, you say I contradict myself? Very well, then. I contradict myself. I contain multitudes. And I can do that because I have an English degree. All right. Pretty much good to go here. Did that Ansible job succeed? It did. Awesome. All right, so the Waza playbook works. I'm real excited about that. Let's go take a look at our Waza agents again. We should have a new one now. No, did it not? If we have to do it manually, you know, whatever. That's fine. I wonder if the variable didn't take. Well, chat, let me ask this then, since there's some conversation about this. Would some streams on writing for technical audiences and leadership audiences be helpful? Because we can make that happen. I know something that we're planning to do is something we're planning to do is a bit of like a resume workshop with a panel of folks at some point. But I think report writing is something that we also, you know, have to do a lot of, and it's not always it's nobody's favorite thing, right? Yeah, we'll put that on the docket. Nobuchi Kaganoza, can you teach ELK configuration? Not super well. Honestly, I'm using a lot of the ELK configurations that are kind of out of the box, but we can dive into it at some point. Not going to focus on it for the moment, though. We're kind of... ELK configuration is... ELK is kind of an end, really, more than a means at the moment. Okay. Coming up on hour 1, and we're not looking at a web server yet, so I want to make that happen. Let's get the IIS stuff running. We do have an IIS playbook, which again, we just said is the role. This is kind of how I set this up, where we have an IIS server role. Here it is. So we're going to do this. And that's available here. So we're going to set up this server to run the IIS playbook. So we'll do Ansible playbook, IIS. Yeah, okay. Ansible playbook, IIS.YAML, and we'll limit it to 10.1.99.8. Same deal. Down it comes. Okay, so we have one active here. That host name is up. And then these others are down, and I want to bring those back up, which is easy enough. Wanma, what do I mean with web shells? Well, we're going to do one, but a web shell, generally speaking, is a file that an attacker can drop on a web server that gives them remote access and code execution on that server. Cobra style. Not sure if you've done this, but it might not be a terrible idea to go over some sort of framework for script writing and the like. How I log comment build out functions. Whoa. So kind of like a programming practices and programming style thing. We do that sometimes on Wednesdays. I think that's really because Wednesdays are our chill code nights where we talk programming. I think that would be where we do most of that. But yeah, I think being a little bit more explicit about that might be a good idea. It's funny. Duct Tape and I were reviewing some stuff last night, and we got into some really interesting conversations about code smell. And what it is. Why is this not... Yeah, startup type automatic. Why is it not starting? Okay. There it is running there. It should be running on the domain controller too. By the way, if you're really liking this, I can't recommend KRDC enough as the remote desktop manager. I really like the way it handles remote connections. It handles VNC and RDP super well. Huge fan. I gotta figure out how to make this happen without having to reboot it, because this is a real pain. Now we're gonna do some things with the web servers that are a bad idea, and that's intentional. And I want to jump out in front of this because people will say, well, who would do that in real life? The answer is somebody will do that in real life. And that's our workstation. I don't think we need it, but let's bring it up anyway. See? Much better. Honestly, don't know why Woz is not starting automatically. That's something to look into. Coding practice have always been very shop specific. I would agree. If you haven't seen them, the Google programming conventions is, at least from a syntactical standpoint, a good place to start. Yeah, the Google style guides. That's what I wanted. These are really I don't agree with all of them, but they're at least a good starting point. You go to like Python and kind of teach you about some basic things to do and even how to do variables, things like that. I do really like this style guide, again, as a starting point for the conversation. You're welcome to disagree with the stuff that's in here, but now you can have that conversation. Okay, now, with the Waza agent up and running, let's go ahead and install the IIS server. Ooh, we tried and it didn't work. It said, failed to find source C temp ISO sources for feature install. Well then. You know, Brian, yeah, this is KDE Neon. This is not Windows right here. All right, well, instead of just mauling over the Ansible playbook, let's get this thing running as an IIS server right now. Here's how you do it. There's a PowerShell way to do it, and then there's the server manager way to do it. And we're going to do it that way because I very specifically want to add a couple of roles that I know will get installed this way, and I'm not so sure about the add Windows feature way. So we're going to just install a role here for this server, and we're going to set it up to be a web server. Management tools, that's fine, but that's not all. Because when we go into the web server stuff, we're going to have to add extra content. So we want to add, we don't need the FTP server. Nope. Back here. We need to set it up to run ASP. To make that happen, I think we need the .NET Framework 3.5. And anything else? I think that's it, but I'll let you know. I think we'll be good here. We'll see what happens. Application development. Here it is. Application development, ASP. There we go. Add ASP.NET. Phenomenal. That gives us the ability to run ASP code. That's what I was looking for. Do it. And so that's going to go ahead and install. Let's get our Linux web server up and running. We're going to add some stuff to the Ansible playbook. Create MySQL user. go to remote login. But we'll get this as a starting point. And we're going to add this to our lamp stack playbook, or role, I should say. So roles, lamp. Here's our task main. Good. We're going to format the document just to make everything nice and clean. Oh, that didn't really do what I wanted it to do. This is really a role. That's good. And we're not going to create a medium DB. So we're going to just leave this alone. Start and enable. That looks good. Service name. SQL started. Love it. Then create MySQL user. And this is where we need to create a new folder here called vars. And make a new file called main.yaml. user. Call it MySQL admin, SQL pass is going to be really horrible password. You know what? Let's make it a real password. With passphrase.taggertech.com. Lethal Dodgem. I like it, but can we do better? Lentic Nibbler. Also pretty good. Swayback in-group. I'll take it. Summer 2022. That may or may not be an actual password in the domain already, Brian. So we're setting that up as our vars, and that means that we can use it here as the MySQL user. And the MySQL pass here. Awesome. Let's give that a shot. And notice that there's a handler for restart MySQL. We shouldn't need that anymore because we're not changing the remote access. So I think we're okay here. And I just want to make sure that I have the right controls for this. Ansible, MySQL. If it's built in, we're good. If it's a Galaxy plugin, we'll have to install it. Community, yeah, see. So we'll have to install that, which is fine. Just need to know that. MySQL user. So this is going to be like Ansible Galaxy, right? Install community.mysql. I think that's right. Ugh. Oh. Collection install. I should have known better. Great. And then git status, git add a, git commit m, add MySQL user creation. Push. Okay. Let's rerun Ansible playbook lamp. And we'll do that on just 99.5. 10.1.99.5. Okay, so that's up and running. Let's see if our Windows server's doing. Feature installation has finished. Phenomenal. If so, then we should also be able to navigate to 10.1.99.8 and see an IIS default page. And we can! We're ready to start making some bad websites. So, in terms of web shells, what are some things that we need to be worried about? With WordPress, obviously, there are a lot of different kinds of vulnerabilities that we have to be aware of. Now, this is going to be a brand new default install of WordPress. We're not going to install plugins, but plugins are usually how you get got. Now, for ASP applications, which definitely exist, what are some things, I'm going to ask chat, what are some things that you think might be concerning with ASP applications that would lead to a web shell? Unrestricted file, Ginge has it. Unrestricted file uploads over permissive shares in the internal network. Those are both really, really good ones. Definitely. And we haven't actually set this up as a file share, but let me show you something that we do, that I see pretty often, that is a bad idea. We'll set up file and storage services. This isn't set up as a file server. We can add that role. Very commonly, we'll see this. Oh, did it get set up as a file? Let's add SMB1 just because why not, right? File server. That's what I wanted. Thank you. So one thing I see constantly is, to make it easier to upload stuff, people will create a share that goes right to the web root of a website. Now, I found an application here. I'm not sure if it's any good, but a vulnerable ASP application. It's funny, if you look in OWASP for vulnerable ASP.NET code, it's actually kind of hard to find. Because if you search for ASP, you get OWASP, right? So I did find, though, this vulnerable web application that's designed for ASP.NET. So I'd like to try to drop this onto our IIS server and see if it's good. Oh, I have to restart the destination. We will do that, but first I want to look at our IIS config. And I know this is a lot of setup and admin, but the truth is, for the blue team, this is the stuff that you, I think, need to know. I feel strongly that you should know how the systems work if you want to be able to defend them. Right? It's not just about responding to alerts. It's not just about knowing the OWASP top 10 or whatever. You got to think about, what are your administrators doing? And when they don't know how to secure something, which does happen, how can you support them? Is that the right way, quote unquote, for that it should work? Maybe, but the truth is that a lot of people who get into an operations role may not have the requisite security background in order to do everything they need to do to secure the system. And that's if you have proper separation of responsibilities anyway. It may be the case in your organization that you do have to put on your sysadmin hat sometimes, go into a server and make the changes. You should be doing that through a change management process, etc. But nevertheless, I feel very strongly that understanding how things are built and how things run is inextricable from good security. I think that you become a much better defender with a little bit of sysadmin experience in there. I would even go so far to say is, if you're on the blue team in an organization, explore the possibility of embedding with the ops team for a couple weeks. Just like, go hang out with them and take notes, ask questions, not judgmentally, but just learn how they do what they do and what their concerns are. A couple things that's going to do for you. One, you're going to get a whole new perspective on your organization if you've only been in a security role there. Two, you're going to learn what the security policies that you may be implementing, actually how that impacts people in real life. Also, you can do this with the desktop support people. It's eye-opening. And then finally, the truth is that every security problem isn't technical, it's human, right? And the security team will be more successful if you have strong personal relationships with your constituents, the people who actually have to operate your assets. And by exactly, you're going to be networking, building goodwill with the other teams. By building those strong relationships, they'll trust you, they'll be willing to work with you in the future, and when you have a concern that you need to bring with them, they are not going to start from a place of resistance. They're going to start from a place of cooperation, and that makes all the difference. So that when there is the next log4j, you can go to them and say, hey, I know this sucks, but we have to do an emergency patch. We have to do it now. This is what needs to happen. And instead of them saying you're just overreacting or it's not that bad or whatever, instead, they'll say, hopefully, all right, that sucks, but I know that you're in this with us. Let's get to work. Hey, Oreo Bite. It's going okay. All right, we've got .NET, ASP. ASP is up and running. All right. So it looks like we have everything set up the way that we want. And it's on localhost. So let's go ahead and try to install that vulnerable ASP app and see if we can play with it. Don't use recommended settings. I don't know why I bother doing this in IE. I should have just done this in PowerShell. And indeed I will. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with IIS, this is how the web server administration window looks. Lots of stuff to configure here. In particular, we're looking at our default website. It's got an ASP.NET client, which cool. So we're pretty much going to extract all of this into our web root. And if we go to explore, we'll see where that lives, right? C inet pub dub root. There's the ASP.NET client, which is our configuration, and then this default IIS start page. By the way, in many vulnerability scanners, almost all vulnerability scanners, IIS start, this is a finding. And I'm wondering if someone can tell me why that's a finding, that this may be an indication of a vulnerability. If this default IIS page right here, if we find that on a web server. Default configuration. That's what the finding says, Cobra style, but what does that mean? Why is that a problem? If the defaults are secure, is it an issue? We're just going to copy all of this right into our web root. Defaults aren't secure. Default might show server info. It doesn't, though. In the case of the IIS default page, why is that a finding? Orbital. It suggests the configuration of the web server, perhaps the underlying operating system, have not been hardened from a security point of view. I'll also add, if they added that feature and didn't need it and aren't tracking it, what else didn't they need but they added? Right? That's the concern. Okay, we just added all of this stuff here. Now let's see what happens when we reload this page. And we got a problem in this ASP page. This may not have worked the way I had hoped. I'll admit I'm not much of an IIS administrator. Yeah. Yes, I saw that there was an error in the Explorer. O equals... It's the same page. Nick. Okay. Honestly, not as much of a concern because we want to talk more about detections for the moment. All right. So if that ASP app isn't playing ball, that's honestly fine for what we want to talk about, because we want to talk about once you get a web shell on a machine, what happens, and I want to get to that point here. Hey, look, MySQL installed successfully, hopefully, on this machine. So let's look at that to see if that's true. Sudo MySQL MySQL user p. I also got our vars. It was swayback in group. Access denied. That's concerning. Let's set the same password for root. No, we're not going to remove the anonymous user. Disallowed root login remotely. No. Remove test database. No. Yes, we're going to reload the privilege tables now. Okay, sudo MySQL uroot p. Great. We have MySQL up and running, which means we can finish the WordPress install. Let's do that. Database name. Okay, the database host is going to be localhost. Database user is root. That's the password. Love that they do that in plain text. But we have to create the database first. Create database WordPress. The create DB database. Oh no, it's no underscore WordPress. There we go. We know we got that right. And I should even be able to connect to it remotely. This is why we use Docker for stuff. It's all set up. Error establishing a data that means either means the username and password is incorrect or can't contact the database server. No, we know that's good. Database is localhost. I wonder if they not allowed us to use root, in which case SQL create user. We'll just get this from DigitalOcean because it's always a pain to do this. Yeah. Create user, WP user at localhost, identified with authentication plugin by identified by. I promise you the firewall is not blocking the MySQL port, especially because it's localhost. Oh, identified by. Okay, and then grant privilege. Grant privilege. Grant all privileges. That's all privileges. Oh my god. On WordPress. We'll limit it a little bit to WP user at localhost. With grant option. Okay. Well, now we'll try this with the WP. Oh my god. The WP user, because I wonder if it was just disallowing root. No, it absolutely did not like. And that's not, yeah. This is killing me. This is the kind of stuff I wish I had set up ahead of time, and I apologize for that. I did not have the time to get it set up ahead of time. I should see something listening on MySQL, which indeed I am. No, the password is not password. Oh, good call. There it is. All right, finally we're good. Site title. Own me. This is, all right. So the username is going to be admin because everybody makes admin. And this is the part where forget all the WordPress plugin vulnerabilities. You see them all the time. Forget all of the, interesting 0 days. This right here, this is how WordPress sites get owned. You know what? Let's do Brian's. We'll do summer. What's spring, right? Spring 2022. Admin at 0day.local. So this is it right here. Now, we finally have a web shell up and running. And we also are going to need to add a new agent to this machine. This is an Ubuntu machine. 1.2.168. Or no, 10.1.99.4. Default. So now we've got the Waza agent up and running on this server as well. And the reason I wanted that is so that we could track activity. Now, we don't have sysmon or anything cool running on this Linux server, so it's going to be pretty default what we get. But you can see that we have these machines up in our agents. Pretty excited about that, honestly. And finally, we can start attacking this thing. Again, it's a default website. So to make that happen, we're going to just log into our Kali box here, which we also have up in the lab. This is where we go from sysadmin to attacker. And we have both of our lab environment networks connected. That looks good. Let's fire up our stuff here. Tmux. All right. Truly amazing how many times I have to type this password when I start up a Linux machine. There's all the C2 stuff I was playing with on Tuesday. By the way, I have become a Sliver convert. Huge fan of Sliver. Oh, I don't have my pen test profile set up on here. That's, it's fine. For now. We'll do Zap kind of the old school way. Just to save a little bit of time. Whoa, I don't have Zap installed. Boy, I really haven't used this much, have I? Where's my Zap gang? Yeah, this is like a brand spanking new Linux machine. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna do a little Brave magic here to make this happen. To do so, Time Traveler, that's very kind. Also kind of getting weird. And one of the things I love about Brave is the ability to do syncing. And so I'm going to make a new profile here. create a new profile. That's what I wanted. We'll make a new profile. We call it pen test. And I don't know why, but I always use the black spiral for my pen test profile. That's just how we do it. And this part, I have to copy the sync code from another machine that has that profile on it, which is my local Kali box. And the reason I do this is because it makes it really, really easy to sync my preferences across machines. But I have to take this off the screen for a second because if I don't, you will see my sync code, and I don't want you to. I am juggling so many windows right now. Okay, so I'm gonna sync here. We're gonna sync everything. And that's it. All of my extensions come in exactly the way that I want them to. I will set up my proxy profile. Change it to a darker blue. That's really important. And rename it to Zap. Sure. And Zap is going to go to localhost. Good. And then last thing I have to do is use the wide address bar. That's going to drive me absolutely insane if I don't do it. Cool. And then ZA proxy is up. And now we're ready to attack. What is your school's policy on using biometric fingerprint readers? Do I like them? Ooh, that's an interesting one. So the organization I work for, we don't use them. For one thing, my organization is a healthcare organization, and we have to be real mindful about PHI, and biometric data definitely qualifies. Switch to the dark theme. All right, we're ready to attack. So let's bring up our... Fine. We're going to go here in our pen test profile, and we're going to connect to Zap. We're going to go to 10.1.99.5. Oh, why did I... Oh, man, I have to do some stuff for Zap to make that not suck. Right. God, brand new Zap setup. Totally forgot about all these things. So, right. Things to do. Turn off the GD HUD. I hate the HUD. I hate the HUD. I hate the HUD. Don't use it. It's the one thing about Zap I really don't like. And then we also have to get the dynamic SSL certificate. Save that. And then in Brave, Go to settings. Go to certs. Burp Zap, the only reason security assessors still have to install Java. Oh man, I ran into the craziest problem with something regarding that the other day, which was, okay, so if you're running a Linux VM and especially Zap, and you're doing it on a network that has an HTTP proxy that does TLS decryption, and they're using a local signed cert, right? You would have, in order to make that whole chain work, you have to make sure that you have the the certificate authority in your keychain, right? Here's the thing that I learned about Java when that happened. You cannot just add that root CA to etc SSL certs and call it a day. Java, the JVM, or the JRE, I should say, maintains its own SSL certificate keychain. And if you want to have a Java application use a custom certificate, you have to import it using a specialized tool that insanely has a default password. It is secured, but it has a default password. Okay, now if we go to 10.1.99.5, I should not see... Uh-oh. Oh, because I'm on HTTPS. If I go to HTTP... Lovely. And if I go to /WordPress... I'm in. So, how do I attack this? Lots of different ways. But of course, the first thing I'm going to do with this here is I'm going to go to wplogin.php. All right. And alt2admin and test123. Record scratch.wave, right? Things to know about WordPress. In its default configuration, it'll just tell us whether we got the right username. Thank you so much for that. The password you entered for the username admin is incorrect. Well, I know admin exists now. Phenomenal. By the way, little Google dorking for you. In URL, wplogin.php. Have at it. Yeah. I think username admin is a bad idea, generally speaking. But okay. Just a fun idea. But look. So the password you entered for username admin is incorrect. Cool. Well, Zap has my login now. It has that request. And what I can do is... Oh, God. Let me exclude the Brave stuff from the proxy. Thank you. We'll include this site in our context. Usual good stuff with Brave and with Zap. And then let's go back to that login and see we've got this redirect to. This is always fun because there is some redirect stuff you can do. But we're going to change this up by fuzzing. We'll add a payload and there's a string. So there's like a bunch of ways we can do this, right? There's files, if you have sec lists installed, things like that. We're just going to do some basic ones, right? Password 123, password 1, and, you know, let me in. Superman, which I always thought was a very funny common password. And then we'll do, you know, winter 2022, summer 2022. We'll add the special character. Summer 2022, and then spring, right? Spring 2022. All right. Good enough as a demo. So we're going to add that, and we're going to just start that fuzzer, and we could add tags to it, just like you can do in Burp. So if I want to see if there's something in the add processor, not URL encode, my bad. Not there, message processors. I can add a processor here where I do a tag creator, and I'll call it invalid, because that's what we saw, or sorry, incorrect. We'll call it incorrect. And so anything with that tag, obviously, will match. And we'll start the fuzzer. And you notice that one of them didn't have that. We could also have looked at the 302. So these others were 200s, but with a redirect. But this 302 is a different situation. In WordPress, a 302 means you got in. And you can see that the byte size is different, obviously, and we didn't get that incorrect tag. So if you were fuzzing a bunch of different passwords here, you can filter, or you can sort by state and say anything that doesn't have that tag, you're good. And you can add more than one payload at a time if you wanted to do a two-dimensional fuzz. That's certainly doable as well. So we've now attacked this with bad passwords, and they're out there. And now we can log into this thing. Admin. And then we'll do, what was it, spring 2022. Fantastic. I am now in. Now we can start talking about web shells and how they look. So there are a couple of different ways that this can look. And I will say that one thing that criminals will do that aren't web shells here is as soon as they have access to this to create posts, as we mentioned earlier, they'll just create a bunch of posts. Right? They'll create content on your site for SEO purposes. Oh, God. You know, best mail enhancement. You know that they're out there, right? That's the kind of stuff that you're going to find on your sites if they get burned. Or, you know, UCLA at USC live stream. Go Bruins. What a totally legal stream. Publish that. Do it. And now, right, that post exists. And that click here could be whatever, right? It could be a fake login, could be a drive-by, whatever you want to do with that in terms of malware. But usually it is just an attempt to get people to go to somebody else's content. Now, this is where it gets a little bit more interesting. If I have access to the admin portal in WordPress, and this is true for other PHP applications, but WordPress I think is uniquely awful about this. I can do some pretty scary stuff here. Let's go over to our themes, our editor, I think is what I want to do. Nope. Template parts. Has this all been changed? Take me to the dashboard. Tools. There we go. The theme file editor. They always change this stuff. I understand. So this is what's so wild about WordPress is that they give you a on the web front end, right? So I don't have access to the server, but I like to use the 404. This is the HTML. If I go to assets, include, block patterns. Here we go. I have PHP files. So hidden 404. I like messing with the 404 page for this. I have the ability to edit raw PHP on the front end. It's beautiful. What can I do with this? Well, we can do basic stuff like system CMD echo res. We'll do a pre-format. This is the easy version. Got to do my PHP string concatenation here. Let's update that file. And then let's go to a page that doesn't exist. Ooh. Oh boy, I messed up that pretty good. Turn array, title. Next.php/2022. So if we try, like, we'll make a bad post, or we'll make a bad request. We get this 404 page. Okay, let's put this back in and see if we do any better. Look at that. So we definitely broke the page in terms of styling, but for a 404 page, you know, whatever. And notice that I'm definitely getting code execution here. Lots of things that I can do at this point. This might be kind of a first stage, right? Poisoning the site to get code execution on this thing. Because it works just fine. And it's small. But from there, what I might do is something like put the pony shell or something else like it on here. So let's go get a PHP reverse shell. I like the pony shell quite a bit. You missed the second bracket at the closing tag? You are right, I did. See if that looks any better. Indeed it does. This browser extension is called HackTools. And you can find it on GitHub, but it's also available on the Chrome web store now. Really, really cool bit of kit. So I like the Pony Shell. Let's download that. I'm just going to save that as just make a web shell demo folder. And, you know, it's never named like this is the webshell.php. So we have that, and let's go ahead and go to CD documents, webshell demo. We've got the 7gz.php. Let's go ahead and fire up a Python HTTP server. Love it. So I'm here in WordPress. So what I can do now is wget 10.http 10.1.99. What is my IP address right now? 103. 103 on 8,000. And that was 76gz.php. You can see that there was a GET request from our website. And now, if I go to, rather than index.php, 76gz.php, I have a web shell. Now, this is like a really, really nice web shell. There are less nice ones, but I deeply love this one. But look at this. I am like on this system. Now, let's see if any of this activity at this point was picked up by our SOC, which is collecting data, right? It's collecting log data. Is there an EDR, an endpoint detection and response tool running on this machine? No, but that's actually fairly common for Linux devices. And even if there were one, the sad truth is that Linux EDRs are not all that in a bag of chips. They don't have the same level of maturity that the Windows ones have, just because there are many more Linux or Windows endpoints. Right, so ways that you could detect this might be network traffic, like Snort. I gotta go to my other machine here. Yeah, Snort is an IDS, not an IPS. I thought I did change this up so that it said configuration. Okay, let's Seclab Infra says never connected. Okay, well then. Is that still true? We should have something in here. There we go. Look, we've got data. Let's go to look at our security events on this machine. Oh, good. We have compliance scores. That's not actually helpful in any way, shape, or form. Oh, compliance. I respect the compliance team, but I feel like compliance often becomes a separate goal than security. And that scares the hell out of me. So I have this, Pony shell on here. What can I do with it? Obviously, if I'm in WordPress, the first thing I might do, if I am a motivated attacker, I'm going to cat wp-config.php. I'm going to look for passwords. Right there. Right, I'm going to see if I can connect to the database from here, which I actually can do with this shell, and see if I can dump more information, right, like the admin user password, and then I'm going to hope that maybe that's reused as an SSH password. I'm going to see if I have any sort of sudo privs, which I'm going to enumerate for users. All that good stuff. But primarily as a run-of-the-mill bad guy, I am now going to just drop a bunch of stuff on here. There's going to be all sorts of junk that I drop because I don't know what's going to get caught and I don't know what's going to stay. So I may have multiple permutations of the same thing that gets dropped. So there's going to be a bunch of files that get created. And so are you tracking file creation on your system? If not, that may be something to consider. And in fact, when I'm doing incident response for web shells, the first thing that I do is I'm going to look in the web root and I'm going to look for date of creation, because I know that most of the website files, especially if it's a PHP page or something like that, they're going to be pretty old or older than the incident if we just caught it. And I want to look for everything that was created newly. And in fact, I may even do that across the board on the system with find if I'm doing a direct on-system incident response. That's the kind of thing that you want to think about. Okay, we got some errors, we got some sudo. This is good. This is good. Let's look at what Waza might see, what syslog might see, just by default here. How often do you see time stomping in these kinds of incidents? Oh, man. What a great question. Almost never. Because again, the criminals don't care. They're not. Your primary adversary for web shells is not the Joker, right? It's not. You're not dealing with the upper echelon. You're not working against the Lazarus Group. You're not working against, Fancy Bear. I mean, maybe you are. I don't know. But most of the web shell activity that you see is going to be much more financially motivated and much more kind of like attacks of opportunity. And so if they have the technical sophistication to do time stomping, okay, maybe that'll happen. But there are other ways that it'll show up. But look at this. We've got some, I don't know what this unknown problem somewhere in the system is. Ah, there was a conversation failed. But more to the point, we did see a failed sudo. Command not allowed. And a PWD of WordPress. I should never freaking see this, right? A command not allowed. The source user doing a command should never, ever, ever, ever happen. Right? So one of the things that's nice if you have this kind of logging set up is you can alert on things that have a source user of dub data, because that's going to be their entry point. Even if they find a way to escalate, they have to start here if you're running the web server as that user. So start there, look for any commands that are happening. Right? Command not allowed, TTY is unknown. So that's good. What else can we do? Now, one of the things that Waza has is kind of built-in alerts, right? And we can customize some of those alerts if we want to. And one of them might be to alert on commands that have like etc password or something like that. Hey, Kichi and Leveron, thank you so much for the follows. Sorry I missed that follow earlier. By the way, you can see the follower goal, which we gotta step up the game on a little bit. But the plan is, if we get to that endpoint, we will do a playthrough of Myst live on stream, and I'm really looking forward to doing that. So hopefully we can get to that number. It's a big push, I know, but want to see if we can get more people taking a look at this content. All right, so we have the web shell here. I'm gonna drop an ASP web shell on the other machine as well, just so we can see what that looks like in a detection standpoint. And let's talk a little bit about some dumb things that admins can do to make this work. So I'm here. This is my website. This is my web server. And we've got file and storage services. I don't have shares, weirdly. I thought I added the share role. Oh, I have to restart it, don't I? Yes, I have to restart the machine. That's fine. Let's do that. How was everybody's week? Mine was a lot. Not just because I had to calm everybody down about Spring4Shell, but, you know, there was a lot on my plate this week. Had some good wins, though. Very excited about the dynamic invoke in Rust. That's going to be huge. Oh, it's not ready yet. People don't seem to remember how to do their jobs these days. You know, I always want to be careful about dunking on other people for how they do their jobs. Obviously, there are massive failures. Obviously, there's laziness. Obviously, there's incompetence. But there's probably somebody out there who thinks that about you. Generally speaking, I like to give people the benefit of the doubt that they have the best of intentions, but there are other reasons why something doesn't happen. And at the end of the day, yelling at them about it isn't going to help you. Right? That's not how people change behaviors. Yeah, I don't know. Empathy is a skill. It's one that I have had to work on a lot in my life. But Rather than just thinking, oh, what's wrong with you? You think about, you know, I don't know, I feel pretty strongly that most folks are coming from a place of good intentions. That's not universally true, certainly. But I can count on one hand the number of people I've met in professional settings that are legitimately lazy. Or legitimately just don't want to do the thing they're supposed to do. Let's get our file share up and running here. Luca, thank you so much for the raid. Welcome, friends. How was your stream? John, I do think that there is often a knowledge gap between what people have to do and what they are able to do. That's certainly true. So this is the big one that I see constantly with Webroot stuff, where if people want to update their web content and they do it in this very, very lazy way, they will make this a shareable drive. Okay. And permissions. We're going to add, now we're a domain user, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to add select principal, IT, what is it? IT staff, right? Nope, not from this. We are domain joined, are we not? Hey, Second the Mind, I'm gonna like call knock it off on that. What I don't want this to become is a place to complain about people. It's really not the vibe. Totally understand that you've got some stuff going on, but this chat ain't a gripe fest. Yeah, we're joined to the domain. Let me see if I can add Jay Hackme as a principal here. Joe Hackme. What? Yeah, these are share level permissions. But I'm concerned that I can't add. Oh, here we go. Add share permissions. Yeah, I can't change from local to domain, which should be what's up. So something went wrong. Oh, wait, you know why? I bet I know why. It's because I'm not a domain administrator. Now you have to enable the checkbox for domain on locations. It defaulted to the local system. Okay. Let's see. So we're making this thing. We'll make it and then we'll modify it. So, Sick in the Mind, where are you talking about in locations? Tell me if I'm in the right place here. Locations. Yeah, the whole point. Yeah, the whole point is that I can't choose the domain. That was why I was going through that. Go to the top option. Object types. Select principal. No. Yes, thank you. Pretty sure it's because I'm not a domain administrator. Even though I'm local on here, I don't have domain permissions. So it's not that it should be enough. I am pretty sure that I have to add login as a domain administrator. So I'm gonna disconnect and reconnect as the DA. Wow, it really does not want to let me in there. It doesn't. It's the local, it's Kundar. It doesn't have domain admin privs because it's the local admin on the... Yeah. So what we'll try to do here is the system might have another privilege, but that's another topic. Yeah, exactly. So enough with this. I'm just going to make the share and then we'll do it another way. Let's me share. Good. Type a custom path. Welcome to server administration. Good. Fine. Now that it's enabled, if I go into the share itself, if I go to C and inetpub and properties, and sharing, and go to permissions. Yeah, see, I don't have the ability to do this because I'm not in here. But let me check something real quick. See, I'm the local admin. The specified domain. So I'm not actually properly joined to the domain. Is the issue? Well, that's fine. That's interesting. No, stick in the mind, that is not the issue. The issue is the fact that it wasn't joined to the domain properly. I'll prove it. PowerShell. Let's see. Should be after 2022. Oh, damn. My mistake. I guess it is joined to the domain. Yeah, actually, hold on. Let's go back to this. So what we're going to do is we're going to do to 1099.8. We're going to do 0 day / administrator. And nope. And that's because it hasn't been given a remote desktop. Honestly, don't care at the moment, because the whole point was I'm pretty sure that I have to do a Oh no, that did work. I thought that it had to be a / for Linux to interpret it, but no, that's it. Okay, so hold on. What am I connected to? That was .3. I want to connect to .8. Yeah, that doesn't work. That's funky. But honestly, I don't want to mess around with this too much more because it's taking more time than I want. The point of all of this is that if somebody enables a web share or a file share for the web root, and I'm able to gain access to it internally, I can upload arbitrary stuff. And so there are tons of good examples of ASP web shells that are available for you. Don't use the ones that are default in Kali if you're an attacker. There are some much better ones that are out there. I'm trying to find the one that I found before that was really, really nice. I think this is it.
Her happiness was the only thing that she wanted in the world. She did a bad thing that makes her have it.
So we'll cdc inetpub www.root. Now, I don't know if this is going to work, but we'll give it a shot. Yes. Make your own because they're caught by Defender by default. That's right. Back on our attack box, let's see if I can get to that. So this is going to be 10.1.99.3. Nope. 8. / ws.aspx. Haha. So ASP and PHP. What are things we got to think about here? These are server-side web technologies, meaning that the code is rendered server-side. And that is why, in large part, we have these kinds of capabilities when we find compromises in them. Web shells are much less of a concern, not entirely, but they're much less of a concern with servers that are dedicated to front-end technologies like Angular or React, JavaScript-heavy applications. Web shells can also be injected into other kinds of technologies like old Django or Rails applications, right? Because again, they're also doing server-side rendering. And if you find a cool like server-side template injection vulnerability, then you may be able to create files on the system that then can get rendered insanely by Django. That's like a harder thing to do, but it's not impossible. Obviously here we have a who am I? And I'm getting code execution here. Spring also recent major vuln. Yes. I'm gonna push back on major. Sick in the mind for Spring for Shell. It was very, very rarefied. But yes, certainly Java apps can have other kinds of inclusions as well. Certainly old Tomcat, things like that. But in terms of just like raw volume, it's going to be PHP and ASP applications that are out there in large numbers. And that's the kind of thing that you want to look for. Let's take a look at what Zap sees, by the way, from our ASP page. See this X powered by ASP.NET? If you want to look for things that have ASP on them, that's what you look for. How do you look for that? Why, Shodan, of course. I don't know why this is in light mode, but let me see. That does better. Yeah. I don't want to show IP addresses on this one, but a just quick search for that header on Shodan showed 6.5 million results. And if you think that they're all... Now I'm just curious, how many results for things that have ASP.NET and have SMB open? The answer is 426. So they exist. That's pretty low. And some of these might be honeypots. Or what's the other thing they might be? They might be portals or gateways. Meaning, or WAFs that let all the ports through. And so you'll get false positives if you're just looking for ports. Firewalls with SYN cookies, that's a good one too. Yep, absolutely. So for example, I know like Imperva, the web application firewall Imperva will just open a bunch of ports and it'll look like you're good, but you aren't really. But yeah, that's something to look for. You can also look for FTP, because people will open FTP as well. But obviously, once we have this, right, we can start doing some work. Net user. Now we have that there. Net user / domain. It's weird that it couldn't be contacted. IP config. Right, now I can start doing like ping 10.1.99.3 if I wanted to, which I actually do want to do because I want to see if I can hit the domain controller, which I can. All right, we've done some stuff on here. We haven't done anything crazy evil, but we've done some stuff on here from just a web shell perspective. Now let's see what our SOC saw. We're going to change up our filter here. We're going to look on our Windows machine. This will refresh. Okay, we've got some logons. Oh, you know what isn't installed is Sysmon, so we're going to be missing a bunch of stuff. That's a thing I can fix, though. Yep, we can run Ansible playbook sysmon and limit it to 10.1.99.8 and install sysmon. Time for Bing. God, I love Ansible when it works. Look at this. Just go do the thing. Download the Sysmon, config, install Sysmon as a service, call it a day. That's it. And because, this is kind of cool, because the host was already in the Windows group for Waza, we have a global config in Waza to collect Sysmon events. So let's run a couple more things in here. And I'm actually going to restart. I'm going to restart the Waza service on the machine. Just to make sure we're collecting them. But we now have the ability to pick up Sysmon logs. And yeah, this is the kind of stuff that I want to be able to more automate moving forward. And I think the next step for us is, doing Terraform for a lot of things. UView, thank you so much for the follow. And Count Zero as well. All right. Sysmon's running, as you saw, and that looks good. Now, let's see. Let's refresh. And let's also run some more evil. Who am I? Don't do this, by the way. Honestly, so many EDRs just look for people running Who Am I? And Who Am I /priv. It's that kind of stuff is going to get you burned as an attacker. As a defender, look for that stuff. Definitely have alerts for things like that. Who's running Who Am I /groups, and especially if it's users like this. I'm in a high integrity context? Am I really? That's interesting. That's really interesting. Can I mess with scheduled tasks? Hold on, that's wild. Does the... Okay, let's see if any of the just random commands got picked up. But did you see that? Okay, so I don't have everything, but... I'm in a high integrity context? What? Yes, the server was rebooted after IIS was installed. That is wild. I wonder what we can do with that. That's kind of interesting. But let's see what else our Waza agent picked up. Yeah, we might have to play with that. So, Windows logon successes. What are our logon successes? Some of these are going to be system, right? Oh, this was all from Ansible. This is all Ansible doing its thing. IIS network clear text logon success. That's actually legit. That was SSH. Yeah. This is all good. We'll refresh again to see if there's some new information. Because I want to see the Who Am I's, things like that. They should be in here as well. You know what though? I'm too curious. I can't not. I have to go red team for a second. Play with some of the stuff we were doing before. I've got Sliver in here, right? Yeah, I do. All right, let's do this. Sliver. I was practicing with Sliver all week. It to be root sudo Sliver. Do I have a dead service running? Hold on. No. Why is this not happening for me? Need to start the service, sudo systemctl. But why? But that worked? Dang. All right. Weird. I don't know why it wasn't started before, but that's fine. Thank you, Ticker. Sudo. Let's enable that so I don't have to deal with that again. Okay. Profiles. None. We'll do profiles new. And we'll do HTTP. It's lame, but we'll do HTTP. 10.1.99.103. And format XC. Or is it executable, I think. And we'll call that HTTP. Cool. And then we'll start HTTP and good. Profiles generate. We'll build a new implant here, and then we'll download it. I'm keeping to my promise to use Sliver and Mythic and the other C2 profiles instead of Metasploit to get better at them. Now, in all honesty, Defender should nab us, but we'll see what happens. Has anything else gotten picked up here? Nothing yet. Give it something to do. So, chat, what are some things that you might think could be good web shell detections? If you're looking for potential web shells, things that attackers have dropped onto a system, other than time, what are some things that you might consider looking for? Polish diet. Awesome. So we know that wget exists, right? We saw that happen. Oh, but we got to do PowerShell. No profile. Window style hidden. And good. C. IWR. URI. HTTP. Actually, from here we just do wget. HTTP 10.1.99.103 8000 Polish diet. Polish diet. That's what? Pierogies and kielbasa? Style hidden. Ooh, connection reset. Oh, capitals. What are they? Golimkis, right? Oh, I gotta use basic parsing. Think we're good there. Access to the path Polish www is denied. So we're gonna try one more time. Hold on, I'm being really stupid. I've got an upload button right here. Why am I doing this? That's why I chose this shell. Yeah, if I go to Documents and Web Shell Demo, I can just upload Polish diet. That's the thing. I don't even need to run a second web server. All right, that didn't like that. So we're gonna go to C and Windows and temp. I'm gonna try to put it there, or actually, we'll try C program data. Loop key. There we go. That's not happening either. Okay, go to C, Windows temp. Or am I getting blocked by Defender? Also possible. Which I'm really hoping we see some alerts about in our SOC. Let's see. We're also connected to this thing. Defender, do you got any alerts for me? Threat history. No. Just seeing logons. I'm not seeing any Sysmon here, which is upsetting. Yeah, that's not making it on. So we might have to use something like Rusty Shell. Or since we're talking about the potential of an SMB share being dropped, what we'll do is we'll, just to show what that might look like, is simulate it. With a little bit of fudging here. I will bring that web server back up from over here. Your phone was so maybe, although hold on a second. Git clone. Wait, do I have cargo on here? I do. Okay. Git clone. Let's do it the right way. Let's do it the right way. GitHub.com/taggart/rusty needle. Do I want to do it this way? Not rustyneedle.com. I do want to clone this. kind of a lot, though. The format, actually, I want it to be shellcode for this. And then cd source, then main.rs. This is the thing that we built on Tuesday. Where we're going to do 10.1.99.103. That's our attack box. Set it up on port 8000. And we'll say note.txt. So this is what we're going to drop onto the system. But I think I have to add some work on this. Long stream, but good work getting done. God, take your time, Vim. Let's go. Rust up. Target list. And we need this one. We're also going to sudo apt install y ming w64. That allows us to... Oh, it's already installed. Hooray! Rust up target add. This allows us to compile for Windows. Target add. Lovely. So we'll do cargo, build, target, that. Build it for release. That'll compile. What we're doing here, just to show how this might happen, now we're moving outside of normal criminals to advanced attackers, where we're going to build a dropper that should evade defender. And then once we evade defender, we're on the system from the web shell. And this is actually the reason I wanted to do this, is because I want to test to see if we are in fact in an admin context by default, which would be crazy. By the way, up here, Rusty Needle takes base64 encoded shellcode. So, kind of an interesting thing that we're going to be doing here. To make this work, I'm going to open up the shellcode, which is complexdelay.bin in Python, and you'll see why in just a moment. I'm going to say with open complex delay.bin. We have to open it up in read bytes mode as f stuff, just call it call it raw equals f.read. These are the bytes. Okay, now if I ask for raw 0, this is kind of cool. It gives me the value, the integer value of the byte, right? So if I say hex raw here, we get 0xe8. This is, I know we're going a little red team, but whatever. This is fun. This is how Rusty Needle expects to get its shellcode, is base64 encoded strings like this. So what we want to do is actually hex encoded equals and this Sliver's implant in this format is gigantic, just as a heads up, but it does work. We're going to do dot join. Sorry, comma separated. Dot join. This is some Python wizardry here. Hex b for b in raw. So there's a lot going on here. This is a Python list comprehension. We're creating a list out of a thing. And the list that we're making is the hex encoded values. And then we are joining them together in a single string with a comma separating all of the values. If we ask for hex encoded 0, it's now a string. So let's ask for like the first 10. Now it looks right. So we'll say with open complex delay dot hex. This is to a fade defender, yeah. And we'll do that in write mode. That's F. F.write, because it's a single line. Hex encoded. Exit. Now, complex delay.hex is 71 megs because it's a gigantic string. What we're going to do with that is we're going to cat complex delay.hex to base 64 3 times. I could have done this in Python too. And then we're going to save that to note.txt, which is the thing that our dropper is looking for. Note.txt is 167 megabytes. Totally freaking crazy, but it does work. It's just the sliver implant is gigantic. So we'll... I actually want to see if I can upload Rusty Needle. To do that, I'm going to copy target release rustyneedle.exe to documents web shell demo. Okay. And before I do anything else, just to help me out, I will leave Defender on, but I'm going to turn off cloud submissions, automatic sample submission, because I don't want that submitted. Documents web shell demo. Can I upload that? No. That's not Defender. I think that's just the permissions of the service. inetpub. You know what? Let me try dub-dub-root. Can I upload to here? I think I tried that, but try it one more time. Oh, that's a little bit different. Do I trust that setting? What if Defender gets excited? I don't know what that means by gets excited. It's not a permanent setting, but yes, I do. All right, something's gone weird with the web shell, which is fine. Okay, there we go. And yeah, obviously I don't have any permissions in here as the web shell user, which is as it should be. Yeah, I can't write anything in here either. That's okay. We'll still play with it. I still want to get past. You know, that's interesting, though, because I wonder if I even needed Rusty Needle for this at all. My whole thing is I want to test to see if I'm in an admin context, so... Get 10.1.99.103 8,000 slash... Polish diet, right? .exe. Oh, pd.exe. Other questions about detections, right? So things that you really want to look for are file creations in web root folders. I think that's like the easiest win. File creations in web root folders, especially for things that are like WordPress sites, things like that, that you don't really expect to have file creations in that often. Now, if you're uploading images, things like that, there are folders in there that you can maybe ignore. But most of the time, you're going to want to look for those new creations and then tune it to get rid of false positives. But that's kind of what we're looking for when it comes to detections for web shells. And then you can even, there are really good Yara rules for web shells that you can run on your system, either ad hoc or using a detector that will help to disposition these. I like to run threat hunts for web shells every couple of weeks to see if there are files that have indicative strings in them. So what is an indicative string? Well, let's take a look at this ASP web shell that we are playing with. Shell execute might be something, right? Execute command might be something. Because we're bringing in this even system.diagnostics. Now, these can be obfuscated, obviously, but they are something to be looking for. In terms of PHP, let's take a look at that pony shell and see if there are some things in there that can be identified. The word shell, honestly, not the worst. Exec. Shell exec. I mean, those functions should never be used in PHP at this point anyway. So I would look for that indeed. Have you used Windows versions of symbolic links? I wonder if Defender will look in them. LNKs, you mean? I mean, yeah. So the default sliver got picked up right away. So instead, let's try rustyneedle.exe. which is much smaller. But if we look at the source code for Rusty Needle, we'll see that our URL is... Oh, we did do 8,000. Perfect. So I don't even have to change up the the URL. Or the web server, I should say. Okay. So we're going to run rn.exe here. And that should make a call out to note.txt. There it is. Looking for note.txt. It's going to take a second to download all that. Look at that. Got a thread. And a session. I don't think this is going to work. What? Well, you know, I think that's a pretty great place to end it. So, other things to be concerned about with web shells is that if you are able to get something downloaded onto it and executed, it's running in a high integrity context, and that means that I've got system. I did not know that. I don't know if that's true across the board, but it looks like for a brand new server, that's how that goes. Yikes. So I know that there was a lot of build today. I don't usually like to do a lot of, setup, but I think this was kind of a home labby stream as well, using Ansible, getting the server set up, understanding how to put all of this lab environment together. It takes time. It does. But once you're there, you can test it and play with it in some interesting ways. But yeah, so web shell detections, definitely something that are worth building out in your environment, and they do require building out, meaning that they aren't always going to, like, the default stuff isn't always going to be what you're looking for, or your default security tool settings aren't going to be tuned enough for you to detect web shell creation. Really concerned that I'm not seeing sysmon from this, but whatever. For now, I think we're going to call it a day. We'll obviously get back in the lab to do some more of this on other Saturdays, but this has been a long stream. There's been a lot of information, so I think we're going to call it there. Let's see if there's anybody else we can send you to. What's Nopix doing? Unclear. Cubes. All right, we'll send you to Nopix. So let's get that going. All right. I will be back on Tuesday, as always, with some more Red Team stuff, and then Wednesday with programming. Until then, friends, please be good to yourselves, be good to each other, and happy hacking. We'll see you next time.